Scripture is authoritative, and we have to understand even the great ecumenical creeds as being subject to being normed by Scripture. It's interesting that the first ecumenical council of 325, Nicaea, Athanasius, of course, was a deacon at that. It was kind of assistant to Alexander of Alexandria. It's only, I think, in the 340s and 350s that we find Athanasius starting to talk about Nicaea as if it was an ecumenical council. It becomes sort of convenient to think of this council in 325 as having greater significance than perhaps it did at the time among the men who gathered there. So I think you're absolutely right in saying Scripture needs to be authoritative.
Was that true for Constantinople as well, or they have a more?
By the time you get to Constantinople,
they had an awareness.
I think the idea of an ecumenical council has emerged much more clearly. Athanasius, I think, came up with the idea quite brilliantly, and this is going to be a useful thing for us to think about 325 in that way, and then 381 becomes the big council. I suppose I would say this. First of all, the key thing for me as a Christian is always, and I think I hope this captures the attitude of the Reformers. First of all, there's an attitudinal approach to the church's tradition. And I want to, although it's very counterintuitive today, countercultural, I want to have a hermeneutic of trust relative to the church's tradition. So by and large, if it says something in a creed that has been held by all Christians for an awful long time in an awful lot of places, I'm going to be inclined to think it's true unless I have very, very compelling reasons for overturning it. So first of all, there's just an attitudinal thing that I don't think Christians should be iconoclastic to the past, which in many ways is exactly what the Socinians were. I've said there were commonalities between the Socinians and the Reformers, but there are also a big difference, and that is the Reformers, they only got rid of the bits of tradition they had to, because Scripture demanded it. They didn't go to tradition with this iconoclastic idea of the whole thing is under suspicion, we need to get rid of it and rebuild from the ground up. So I think a trusting attitude to tradition based in a proper biblical ecclesiology, I think, is important. Secondly, I think before we overturn something like Constantinople or Chalcedon, or the Westminster Confession of Faith.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing we need to do is understand these are ecclesiastical documents, and therefore any rejection of them must be done within an ecclesiastical context. That's part of what's going on. Secondly, we need to actually know what they were actually saying in order to reject it. And I think that's where some of the modern doctrine of God stuff really falls down in its tilting at windows.